Hi, everybody.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first ever Trailblazer interview. Now, what is a Trailblazer, you might ask? Well, Trailblazers are people that have paved the ways for others to learn. And our first guest is Jane Griffiths from Jane's Delicious Garden, Jane's Superfoods, etc. Hi, Jane. Nice to have you on the call.
Hello, Tanya. I think we're both better at gardening than the tech stuff. We've taken a while to get us to this point, but yeah, hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here as a trailblazer.
Thank you very much. Now, Jane, tell me quickly, who is Jane?
Oh, my goodness. There are many, many, many hats. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I've just got a dog who's arrived. Okay, I'm a dog owner. Yes, there we go. Bye-bye, off you go. I'm an artist. I paint. I'm a writer. I'm a gardener. I'm a traveler. I've done so many things. I love doing. I'm a curious person in the sense that I'm inquisitive about the world around me, and I like finding out about the world around me. If there's something that I don't know, I like being able to discover what it is. I like learning new things. I love learning new things. There's nothing like a good learning curve to keep me alive and active and happy. I think that more than anything else sums me up. I like learning curves. Yeah.
And I think that's why you're such an, if I can call it, innovator, because I mean, you take these learning curves and you turn it into amazing teaching opportunities and learning for somebody else. So your deep need for knowledge and wisdom and just getting as much out of life as possible and then sharing it really makes it wonderful. So we appreciate that of you. Thank you, Jane. Jane, tell me another thing. You obviously, and we'll talk about your books just now. Your journey is well into nature, self-sufficiency, sustainable living, etc. Where did your sustainability or self-sufficiency learning experience start, or what triggered it that you wanted to be in that field?
You know, it probably actually goes all the way back to my parents and how I grew up. My parents were born in the 20s. They were born in 1925. So they came out of that era where everything was saved, everything was recycled. We did not have Coca-Cola in our fridge. We had homemade lemonade in our fridge. My dad, even though I grew up in Pietermaritzburg where there wasn't a water problem, my dad piped all the water going out from our baths out into the garden so that Mom's kumquat tree would be watered with our bath water and the lemon trees were watered with our bath water. And this is back in the 60s that this was happening. Everything was saved. Mom never threw anything away. And I grew up knowing how to do this kind of thing, even though I had no interest in it. When I got into my teens and in my 20s, I was not interested in cooking. I was not interested in growing any food. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted excitement and adventure. And I did that. The first time I went traveling as an adult at the age of 24, I got on a plane and I got off at Kinshasa and I went hitchhiking around Central Africa.
Wow.
So, you know, for me, gardening didn't tick any of those boxes of excitement and travel and exploring the world. And so my personal journey as far as self-sustainability and growing my own food and harvesting and doing all of that started after I spent a year in the States. Keith and I traveled across the States, and this was in the mid-90s, and I had fallen in love with the chilies. At that stage in South Africa, all you could get were little hot red ones and little hot green ones. There were no jalapenos or serranos or habaneros or anything else. They were just hot red and hot green. And I'd fallen in love with all of these chilies. I'd fallen in love with the flavors. And I knew that the only way to get those was to bring the seeds back home and grow them. So that summer, I dug up some lawn, I threw in compost, and I had about 25 different varieties of chilies growing in my garden. And that's what got me hooked. Not only addicted to the heat, because I love the heat of a good chili, but addicted to that process of sowing the seed, nurturing the plant. And then, oh my goodness, you know, making the most of the harvest, because you can imagine how many chilies I had after, you know, with 25 plants growing. And so suddenly I started making hot diggity chili jelly and chili ristras and drying them and giving gifts away of chilies galore. And I also then dug up more lawn, and the chilies were joined by tomatoes and eggplants and lettuces. And wherever I traveled, I came back with more things. And then, you know, it also, there was this innate thing that I knew how to take a slip. For example, I'd never, when we were kids and we went away somewhere, we always came back with mom's array of plants on the dashboard, all wrapped up in little paper towels with you know, plastic bags with water. And I knew just from watching mom how to take a slip, how to break it off with my thumb to get that little heel. I knew it. I knew it because I'd done it with mom as a little girl. I knew when I started making my chili jelly, I knew how to sterilize bottles. I knew how to make the jelly. I knew how to hang it in a jelly bag, in a muslin bag. I just knew these things. They had been taught to me by my mom from a very young age. I knew how to harvest. And, you know, mom came from a farming family. So I think I grew up going and visiting the farm where everything was grown, everything was reared, everything we ate came from the farm. And I think all of that just inculcated in me this belief that we need to live lightly on the planet, and it's a better way to live. It's a healthier way to live. And especially as I started, you know, growing up and maturing, and seeing the world around me and seeing what was changing, I realized that, you know, I can't change the world, but I could take care of my little patch. And funnily enough, my little patch has now helped change the world, because through my little patch, so my books grew. And so they've spread my little patch and my garden angels out into the world out there.
Amazing. What I really enjoyed about your answer here now was, firstly, that you had some skills that were passed on from your mother and your father, and that is critical. And I think that's something that stopped in a certain generation because people got busy. They got busy in a different type of world, a technological world, a world all about money, etc. So that stopped. But I think COVID has changed a lot of mindsets, and we've gone back to this, we need to teach our children how to survive, because otherwise they won't. So I really, really appreciate what you said about your mother teaching you. And it wasn't even like, come Jane, we're gonna learn how to hang up jelly. It just happened because it was this transfer of skills. Yes. So that's really good. And the other thing that I really appreciate about what you are saying is a lot of my community members say, oh, I'm not worthy to put up my stuff on the group because it's just a little garden patch I have, or I've never grown pumpkins, I've only grown tomatoes, so how can I put up my pumpkins? It's not good enough. And I say to them, you know, every little thing that you do is inspiring to somebody else, if you've done it before or not. So you were talking about, you went onto your little patch and you made a difference in your little patch, and look what your patch has achieved, because as you say, from your little patch, all these books started forming. And I'm like, it's gone out into the world and it's blessed so many other people. So that's insane. So I would like to say to the community, your little patch can make a difference too, even if it's just reporting on how your pumpkins are doing. It's making a difference in somebody else's life.
Absolutely. And, you know, I remind people, because it's not just in a gardening field. You know, my whole gardening journey started with just that little handful of chili seeds. And look where it spread. So it might not be in gardening, you might have skills elsewhere. You might have, you know, what's interesting is that you don't know how much you know until someone starts asking you questions about it, and then you can answer. And that's how my first book started. Is a friend of mine who's had been here quite a few times, and he phoned me the one day and he said, Janie, when are you going to start growing organic veggies? And I said, Richard, you've walked through my garden. You've seen my organic veggie garden. And he sort of took one beat and he said, oh, good. Okay, then you can teach me. And I had him on speed dial. For the next few months, he was on speed dial, and he just asked me every week, every few days, Janie, this is happening. What must I do? Oh, they've done this now. What must I do about that? And I could answer every single question. And that's what made me realize that I had, when I started as well, I started growing veggies in 1995. There was no Google. There were no books, organic books on vegetable growing, herbs or veggies in South. Margaret Roberts there were herbs, but very little on vegetables, and most of them were using toxins and poisons and chemicals, etc. And I knew from the beginning I want to do that. So I learned from my garden. I learned from experimenting and from subscribing to American magazines, where so much of it was very relevant, and the organics have been way ahead in America than we are. So I've learned a lot from them, but so much was different. The products were different. The climate was different. The plants were different. So I could just toss out a lot and experiment with things as well. And I learned by observing and watching my garden. And that is something that is so incredibly life-changing, invigorating, life-affirming, is to go out into your garden and just to be in touch with nature. Especially, I think a lot of the tribe members already live in rural areas. They're already very aware of weather patterns and where the moon is and what it's doing. But for a lot of us, we do live in cities, and gardening connects us to nature. We lose track of nature living in the city. And gardening reconnects us. That's what's so important.
Yes, absolutely. No, definitely. And something that I've picked up now as well, you were learning, and from learning, you started teaching. So as you said, you don't know how much you know until somebody asks you questions, but you also don't know how much you can share with somebody until you've got questions and you start learning yourself, and then you take it from there. So, okay, so you said your first book started this way. What was your first book?
The first book was Jane's Delicious Garden, and it started as a DVD. That one. Yep, that book. It started as a DVD because another thing it's fun. Well, who's Jane? I'm also a television producer. That's been my main career.
Oh, there you go.
From Keith and I have produced for Carte Blanche, for documentaries around the world, from silly arts programs, etc. So when I started doing this, when I started realizing I had this information and I needed to share it, God forbid I got hit by a bus and all this information got lost. And so there was this urgency to sort of get it out there and share it. And that was my first intention. It was to share it in some shape or form. And so we started, and I treated myself like a client. I thought, okay, we started shooting some stuff and it was a bit random. So I said, okay, I've got to do it properly. I've got to write a script for this DVD. And I started writing, and within a week, I'd hit 20,000 words, which is way bigger than a script for a DVD. And I thought, okay, well, I'm writing a book. Here goes, boom. And I wrote, even on Christmas Day down at the beach with friends, and a friend was saying, what are you doing? And I said, no, I'm writing a book. Oh, he said, good luck with that. And on Christmas Day, I'm still on my laptop. And then when I finished, I approached publishers, and I thought, well, I'll start at the top. And I contacted Jonathan Ball, and within 3 days, I had a publishing contract. And when the book came out, within 2 weeks, my publisher called me and she said, Janie, if you need to make any changes on the book, you need to make them now, because we've already sold out the entire first print run and we're going into reprint. And that was within 2 weeks. It went straight onto the bestseller list, and that book has now sold about 35,000 copies, and it still continues. Which for me is it's fantastic for me, but it's also fantastic. What it says to me is that there are continually more and more and more people coming in are new and wanting to learn, which I thought that this was going to be a wave that would break, and it's not. That wave is still, and COVID, my books sold incredibly well during COVID because everybody was now wanting to grow their own food. And that hasn't abated. That interest is still there. People are so much more aware that, exactly as you said, we lost that generational transfer of info. So now we have to find it somewhere else. People, we forgot how to grow our own food. We forgot how to feed ourselves, which is like pretty stupid.
Yes.
So now we've got to learn it all over again. And as I said in an interview once, and it was early in the morning, and I had been drinking wine the night before, I said, it's not rocket surgery. Which is like, but it's not rocket surgery, don't be scared to make mistakes. Don't be scared to experiment. Don't be scared to go out there and do it. And that, my first book, then I'm busy with my 7th book at the moment. I can't say anything about it at the moment right now, but it will be coming out next year. And this one, every single book that I've written has been exactly that you were talking about, that because when I start writing it, for example, in my first book, there was something I was writing, and something about nitrogen and legumes fixing nitrogen. And I stopped and I thought, okay, yeah, legumes fix nitrogen, but what does that actually mean? And I put myself in the position, somebody asked me the question, what does it mean if plants fix nitrogen? And I don't know how to answer. So off I go down a rabbit tunnel, a rabbit hole, researching. And every book has been like that. And what I love about my books, I mean, Jane's Delicious Herbs, and then the subsequent one, Jane's Delicious A to Z of Herbs. I started years ago. I started a little A to Z notebook where I had the little A to Z, and I had all the herbs written in the A to Z. And then I had in the A to Z next page, I had all the ailments, and then I'd cross-reference between the two. And it was just a little A to Z notebook. So when A to Z of Herbs came, I started doing that. It's like, I pulled out this notebook. There was all my notes already, but using that as the basis, that's how I've then expanded it into this big book. But I use that. I use my books all the time. But the difference is now, instead of going into my shelf and finding a whole bunch of herb books that I have to find something, I use mine because I know my recipes are in there. They're tested. I know that these recipes, like a recipe for a cold and flu tincture, it works. And if I need to, if somebody's, I know the ailments that affect me, and I immediately know which herbs. But if somebody comes and says, I've got this, and I have to go and look it up. I don't keep it all in my head, but there it is in my book. It's all researched and backed up, and I found out about it. So I'm actually quite selfish. I write these books for me. I'm just lucky that you guys all love them as well.
Well, I can tell you one thing. There's so many writers out there these days, and I'm saying it with tongue in cheek. And there's a big contrast between what I see here and what I hear you say to modern writers today, because we've got something called AI and people are using AI to write books. And I'm like, people, you've taken all your experience and all your research. I mean, it takes you 2 years to write a book, 3 years to write a book.
It takes 2 years.
So you're actually using your experience, your research and everything to write your own book. Which I appreciate, because there's really, I just in the last week got a message of someone saying they wrote a book on food preservation, and I don't know if it's an AI written book, because some people will just take AI and they will just put it in a book and sell it as their own. So I appreciate what you've put into this, your heart and soul. And, when I go through your books, I can actually see Jane. I can find Jane Griffiths in these books, because I read here and I'm like, you can immediately see the style of writing. It is a person, and we find you here. And all that wisdom that your mother transferred to you, this is now a different maybe type of wisdom, but we are getting it from you. So thank you for transferring that and supplementing some of our parents maybe that do not have these skills to transfer to us. So you are being that, standing in for that with these books. And another thing I like about your books, it's so user friendly. So for some reason, you must be a very logical person and a person that can put things very orderly, because there's nothing confusing about your books.
Oh, thank you.
And like you said, you ask yourself the question about, but what does it mean for nitrogen to be fixed? And you answer the question in the book. I never have to guess if I read your books. If I read your book, it's like, oh, wow, yes, that's it. And that's what I love about your book. So please tell me from start to finish. You got Jane's Delicious Garden, which is number 1. What was number 2? You said Jane's Delicious Herbs.
No, number 2 was Jane's Delicious Kitchen, which was a cookbook. Okay. Because if you'd asked any of my friends, it's out of print, unfortunately, because my my publishers wanted to position me as a gardening author. So it did 2 print runs. It sold 6,000 copies. But if you'd asked any of my friends, before I wrote the book, what book would Jane write? They would have said a cookbook, because I was known for my cooking, and especially cooking from my garden. So, so Jane's Delicious Kitchen. Then third one was Jane's Delicious Herbs. Then came Jane's Delicious Urban Gardening. Now that is all about living sustainably in the city. So that's about saving water, rainwater harvesting, keeping urban bees. I mean, I've got a beehive. I've got hens. I've got water tanks. I've got grey water tanks. I've got an eco swimming pool which is filtered by plants and frogs and 100% natural. There's no chemicals that go into it. An urban orchard, fruit trees, how to grow fruit trees, how to grow fruit in small places, how to grow on rooftops, how to grow on walls, how to maximize spaces, community gardens. All of that is in Jane's Delicious Urban Gardening. So let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Jane's Delicious A to Z of vegetables came next, because from when I wrote the book, so for example, like living seeds. Living seeds, when I wrote my first book, living seeds didn't exist. But by the time 2015 came around, living seeds not only did exist, but was a powerful force in our country as far as seed savers, as teaching people to grow, as far as providing seeds and other products and knowledge. And there were lots of other companies as well that had grown up in the interim, but Living Seeds is a very good example. So, and also
leader in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. And a true trailblazer. And so also there'd been this increase of heirloom seeds and the availability of heirloom seeds. We didn't have to, sneak seeds in or whatever. You could get them here. So I've put those, that expands Jane's Delicious Garden. There's a lot more information in there on seed saving and more specific information on growing specific vegetables, a whole range of vegetables, especially heirloom vegetables. Then Jane's Delicious A to Z of Herbs, which is actually very similar to Jane's Delicious Herbs. It's just a smaller print of that. It doesn't have the Herbs has got the one that you've got. Has got all the recipes in the back. We had to take that out. Economics, we had to do a smaller. So that's A to Z of Herbs. And then my lockdown book was, I loved lockdown. I was writing a book. It was like a writer's retreat for me. Was Jane's Delicious Superfoods, which was that one, yes, which is all about healthy food, why it's healthy for us. I've got information on there where applicable on how to grow it. We can't grow Brazil nuts because they only grow in the tropical forests in South America, but where we can grow, I've got the information on there, how to use them, why we should be eating them, and why they are healthy for us. And then my 7th book will be coming out next year. Yeah. So that's it. Each time I think, oh my goodness, I'm done. I've written everything. I don't have anything more to write. And then there's this little niggling, let's see. Yes, and then suddenly a book explodes. No.
Oh, wow.
Also very lucky that I have a fantastic team at Jonathan Ball. The same designer has done all my books from scratch. And the team there is magnificent. And what is so great about them is that, especially having come out of the film industry, where everything is kept to yourself. If you mention something, someone will steal your client, or someone will it was a very close and very competitive, and especially, you know, doing carte blanche, it's about polemic and conflict, and this is the total opposite. I get so enriched by sharing. It makes my world bigger by sharing, and I'm able to just share all of this, my information. And in the film industry, there are lots of big egos bouncing up against each other. Whereas the team that I have, the teams, they've been different ones working on my books. Every single one, there's been no ego. It's all about what is best for the book, including me. I've had to do things like where I've written and I've spent literally weeks and weeks and weeks writing something. And then when it gets to the editing stage, and my editor, and I trust my editors, and they'll say to me, Janie, we need to take all of this out. It's extraneous. It's not adding to the book. It's actually distracting from the book. So all my carefully crafted words, delete. Because the minute she says it to me, I see it. And I go, yeah, she's right. She's absolutely right. And I have to delete those, kill your darlings, you know, you do that. And the end result is better for it.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, this is wonderful, and it's great that you've got such a great team behind you, and we're really looking forward to your 7th book.
I believe 7, isn't it?
So, and I remember before Superfoods came out, when you let me know about Superfoods, and I was so excited, and so I'm looking forward to hearing about the other one. So whenever it's ready.
I will let you know as soon as I'm able to. And in the interim, you continue doing what you are doing, because you're a fantastic trailblazer in this whole community and a guide. And you also do exactly the same thing. You do it through practical experience. You try it out, you test it out, and that is the only way to do it. And you're a star doing that.
Thank you, Jane. Well, it's really a passion for me, and I really enjoy it. I think this is a passion for you too, and I think that's what makes it such a success. Yeah. Because it's something that's close to your heart, and self-sufficiency is my thing. So, and that's what I want to try and give through to everyone out there, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. It's great to hear that sometimes too. It just gives you that extra little bit of boost and motivation. Well, Jane, tell me another thing. You've experienced all this and gone through all this. If you had, or let's start with, what is the greatest lesson you've learned through this whole journey that you've had up until today? The greatest lesson that you can share with our tribe?
I think you just said it right there. It's passion. It's passion. If you find something that you are passionate about, you will love doing it, and it won't be work. It'll fill you with joy. And when something fills you with joy, you bounce out of bed in the morning to do it. And in this world, so many people don't bounce out of bed. They dread getting up in the morning and going to work. So really, I found something that I was passionate about. And you know, I'm also passionate about my painting. When I can't paint when I'm writing, so I haven't painted for a while. But when I'm not writing and I paint, I'll lie there thinking about it. And I'm passionate about cooking. So all those things, find the things that you're passionate about, and that for me has been the greatest lesson. Is you'll know the signs. If you dread doing it, then it's not a passion.
Absolutely. And I think this is going to tie into what my next question would have been. What is your greatest piece of advice? Did you want to add something to that, or do you think that will just link in?
I think also another lesson that I've learned, and that I needed to learn through growing my own food, is patience. I was a lot more impatient when I was younger, and then also being in the television world. Okay, we're running out of time, so let's just see. It's wanting to remaining meeting. We've got 10 more minutes. So you know, especially in the TV world, everything is deadlines. You're having to do everything to a deadline. So my life revolved around, you said, as far as my books being organized, I was the mother hen. I was always, we call ourselves wide angle and zoom. Keith would be zoom, he would do detail. I'd do wide angle because I could see that bigger picture and see where we were going, both planning a shoot and then on planning and working our way through an edit. I would be very much, we'd both swap those roles, but it was generally, I was more that wide angle. And I can see that big picture. But I'd get impatient. It was like, it's got to be done. It's got to be done. And I'm still impatient. I'm still learning the lesson. But one place where you can't be impatient, you can't rush a seed. It will germinate when it's ready. You can't rush broccoli to produce its head. It will do it when it's ready. And so that for me has been a biggest lesson. And so, you know, for people who are starting out, don't rush. Don't try and do everything at once. And learn everything at once. Don't get my garden's still not finished. It's never finished. You will always have a to-do list. Don't try and get to the bottom of it. Then that's when we getting into our grave with our gumboots on us, when you've got to the bottom of your to-do list. I always want to have a to-do list. I've got a to-do list of stuff I need to replace in the garden. So that patience, that's another big lesson that gardening really does teach us.
Okay, well, and obviously that to-do list, as you said, will never end. So you might as well have a to-do list that you will enjoy doing.
Exactly.
And so that's into the passion. So yes, okay. So I like your answers. Thank you very much. So Jane, we are running out of time. So before we run out of time completely, where can people find all your wonderful books?
Well, Jane's Delicious Shop. I've got my books online on Jane's Delicious Shop, and that's janesdeliciousshop.co.za. They are all available at any good bookstores as well, and they are available at most online outlets, book outlets and Take-A-Lot, etc., etc. They're available online everywhere. But obviously, if you buy it from my online site, I make more money. So buy it from my site, please. But that's not, it's never been my intention. But it's, you know what, it's never been my intention to really sort of make huge amounts of money off the book. You're never going to. You don't get a lot from royalties. So, you know, just share it, get the information out there. That has always been my guiding intention. Books, and it has really come to fruition that my words are out there. And my books combined now have sold over 60,000 copies. So that makes me
well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Well, guys, there you have it. janesdeliciousshop.co.za or com?
No, co.za.
Okay, janesdeliciousshop.co.za. Go get your books, guys. Go gift it. It's Mother's Day soon. I think so. Go get a book for your mother, for somebody's birthday or something. What a great gift to give, because this is a gift that doesn't stop giving either. I mean, there's so much in there. So, Jane, thank you for being a trailblazer. Thank you for making the way for others and for encouraging other people, for empowering them, and for teaching us. And thank you for being part of the self-sufficient homesteading and gardening community, and just being there for everybody as well. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate the work that you do. And we are super excited about your new book. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.